Men's want it suffered, but the men supplied. The goats made with their inarticulate cries. Goats beyond number this small island breeds, so tame that no access disturbs their feeds. No hunters that the tops of mountains scale, and rub through woods with toil, seek them at all. Nor is the soil with flocks fed down, nor plowed, nor ever in it any seed was sowed, nor placed the neighbor Cyclopes their delights in brave vermilion proud deck ships, nor rights useful and skilful in such works as need perfection to those traffics that exceed their natural confines, to fly out and see cities of men, and take in mutually the prease of others. So themselves they live, and to their island that enough would give a good inhabitant, and time of year observed to all things art could order there. There, close upon the sea, sweet meadows spring, that yet of fresh streams want no watering to their soft burdens, but of special yield. Your vines would be there, and your common field, but gentle work make for your plough, yet bear a lofty harvest when you come to shear, for passing fat the soil is. In it lies a harbor so opportune, that no ties, hawsers, or gables need, nor anchors cast. Whom storms put in there are with stay embraced, or to their full will safe, or winds aspire to pilots' uses their more quick desire. At entry to the haven, a silver ford is from a rock impressing fountain poured, all set with sable poplars. And this port we arrived at, by the sweet resort of some god guiding us. For 'twas a night so ghastly dark, all port was past our sight. Clouds hid our ships, and would not let the moon afford a beam to us. The whole isle one, but not an eye of ours. None thought the blore that then was up, shoved waves against the shore, that then to an unmeasured height put on. We still at sea esteemed us, till alone our fleet put in itself, and then were strook our gathered sails. Our rest ashore we took, and day expected. When the morn gave fire, we rose and walked, and did the isle admire, the nymphs Jove's daughters putting up a herd of mountain goats to us, to render cheered my fellow soldiers. To our fleet we flew, our crooked bows took, long piled darts, and drew ourselves in 3 parts out, when by the grace that God vouchsafed, we made a gainful chase. 12 ships we had, and every ship had 9 fat goats allotted it, 10 only mine. Thus all that day, even till the sun was set, we sat and feasted, pleasant wine and meat plenteously taken, for we had not spent our ruddy wine a shipboard. Supplement of large sort each man to his vessel drew, when we the sacred city overthrew that held the sea-combs. Now then saw we near the Cyclopes' late praised island, and might hear the murmur of their sheep and goats, and see their smokes ascent. The sun then set, and we, when night succeeded, took our rest ashore. And when the world the morning's favour wore, I called my friends to council, charging them to make stay there, while I took ship and stream with some associates, and explored what men their neighbour isle held, if of rude disdain, churlish and tyrannous, or minds bewrayed, pious and hospitable. Thus much said, I boarded, and commanded to ascend my friends and soldiers, to put off and lend way to our ship. They boarded, sat, and beat the old sea forth, till we might see the seat the greatest Cyclop held for his abode, which was a deep cave near the common road of ships that touched there, thick with laurels spread, where many sheep and goats lay shadowed. And near to this a hall of torn-up stone, high built with pines that heaven and earth atone, and lofty fronted oaks, in which kept house a man in shape immane and monstrous, fed all his flocks alone, and would not afford commerce with men, but had a wit abhorred, his mind his body answering. Nor was he like any man that food could possibly enhance so hugely, but beheld alone, showed like a steep hill's top, all overgrown with trees and brambles. Little thought had I of such vast objects. When arrived so nigh, some of my loved friends I made stay aboard, to guard my ship, and 12 with me I shored, the choice of all. I took beside along a goat-skin flagon of wine, black and strong, that Maro did present, Evantheus' son, and priest to Phoebus, who had mansion in Thracian Ismarus. The town I took, he gave it me, since I with reverence struck of his grave place, his wife and children's good, freed all of violence. Amidst a wood sacred to Phoebus stood his house, from whence he fetched me gifts of varied excellence, 7 talents of fine gold, a bowl all framed of massy silver. But his gift most famed was 12 great vessels, filled with such rich wine as was incorruptible and divine. He kept it as his jewel, which none knew but he himself, his wife, and he that drew. It was so strong that never any filled a cup, but that was but by drops instilled, and drunk it off, but 'twas before allied with 20 parts in water, yet so swayed the spirit of that little, that the whole a sacred odor breathed about the bowl. Had you the odor smelt and scent it cast, it would have vexed you to forbear the taste. But then, the taste gained too, the spirit it wrought to dare things high, set up an end to my thought. Of this, a huge great flagon full I bore, and in a good large knapsack victual store, and longed to see this heap of fortitude, that so illiterate was, an upland rude, that laws divine or human he had learned. With speed we reached the cavern, nor discerned his presence there. His flocks he fed at field. Entering his den, each thing beheld did yield our admiration. Shelves with cheeses heaped, sheds stuffed with lambs and goats, distinctly kept, distinct the biggest, the more mean distinct the youngest, and in their precinct, proper and placeful, stood the troughs and pails, in which he milked, and what was given at meals, set up a creaming. In the evening still, all scouring bright as dew upon the hill. Then were my fellows instant to convey kids, cheeses, lambs, a shipboard, and away sail the salt billow. I thought best not so, but better otherwise, and first would know what guest gifts he would spare me. Little knew my friends on whom they would have preyed. His views proved after, that his innards were too rough for such bold usage. We were bold enough in what I suffered, which was there to stay, make fire and feed there, though bear none away. There sat we, till we saw him feeding come, and on his neck a burden lugging home, most highly huge, of searwood, which the pile that fed his fire supplied all supper while. Down by his den he threw it, and up rose a tumult with the fall. Afraid, we close withdrew ourselves, while he into a cave of huge receipt his high-fed cattle drave, all that he milked. The males he left without his lofty roofs, that all bestrowed about with rams and buck-goats were. And then a rock he lift aloft, that dammed up to his flock the door they entered. 'Twas so hard to wield that 22 wagons, all four-wheeled, could they be loaded, and have teams that were proportioned to them, could not stir it there. Thus making sure, he kneeled and milked his ewes, and braying goats, with all a milker's dues. Then let in all their young, then quick did dress his half-milk up for cheese, and in a press of wicker pressed it, put in bowls the rest, to drink and eat, and serve his supping feast. All works dispatched thus, he began his fire, which blown he sauce, and thus did inquire, Ho, guests, what are ye? Whence shall ye these seize? Traffic or rove ye, and like thieves oppress poor strange adventurers, exposing so your souls to danger, and your lives to woe. Thus uttered he, when fear from our hearts took the very life, to be so thunderstruck with such a voice, and such a monster see. And thus I answered, Erring Grecians, we from Troy were turning homeward, but by force of adverse winds, in far diverted course, such unknown ways took, and on rude seas tossed, as Jove decreed, are cast upon this coast. Of Agamemnon, famous Atreus' son, we boast ourselves the soldiers, who hath won renown that reaches heaven, to overthrow so great a city, and to ruin so many nations. Yet at thy knees lie our prostrate bosoms, forced with prayers to try if any hospitable right or boon or other nature, such as have been won by laws of other houses, thou wilt give. Reverence the God, thou greatest of all that live. We suppliants are, and hospitable Jove pours wreak on all whom prayers want power to move, and with their plagues together will provide that humble guests shall have their wants supplied. He cruelly answered, O thou fool, said he, to come so far, and to importune me with any god's fear or observed love. We Cyclopes care not for your goat-fed Jove, nor other blessed ones. We are better far. To Jove himself dare I bid open war, to thee and all thy fellows if I please. But tell me, where's the ship that by the seas hath brought thee hither? If far off or near, inform me quickly. These his temptings were, but I too much knew not to know his mind, and craft with craft paid, telling him the wind thrust up from the sea by him that shakes the shore had dashed our ships against the rocks, and tore her ribs in pieces close upon his coast, and we from high wrack saved, the rest were lost. He answered nothing, but rushed in and took 2 of my fellows up from the earth and struck their brains out against it. Like 2 whelps they flew about his shoulders and did all embrue the blushing earth. No mountain lion tore 2 lambs so sternly, lapped up all their gore, gushed from their torn up bodies, limb by limb, trembling with life yet, ravished into him. Both flesh and marrow stuffed bones he ate, and even the uncleansed entrails made his meat. We, weeping, cast our hands to heaven to view a sight so horrid. Desperation flew with all our afterlives to instant death in our believed destruction. But when breath the fury of his appetite had got, because the gulf his belly reached his throat, men's flesh and goat's milk, laying layer on layer, till near choked up was all the pass for air. Along his den, amongst his cattle, down he rushed and streaked him. When my mind was grown desperate to step in, draw my sword and part his bosom where the strings about the heart circle the liver and add strength of hand. But that rash thought, more stayed, did countermand, for there we all had perished, since it passed our powers to lift aside a log so vast as barred all outscape. And so sighed away the thought all night, expecting active day. Which come, he first of all his fire inflames, then milks his goats and hews, then to their dams lets in their young, and wondrous orderly, with manly haste dispatched his housewifery. Then to his breakfast, to which other 2 of my poor friends went, which eat, out then go his herds and fat flocks, lightly putting by the churlish bar, and closed it instantly. For both those works with ease as much he did, as you would ope and shut your quiver lid.